Hello and welcome to this Motion 5 tutorial. You saw the intro that I put on the screen at the start, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to make that project less the underwater effect. The reason I did that in FCPX, and I'll make that a separate video. This project itself is it's not difficult to do, but I mess a lot around with the properties and within the inspector of each group, of each part that goes to make up the intro itself. So I'm going to try and break it down into parts, and the first part being is getting into motion and creating the background. It'll all be on the same video, however I'll just break it down into parts. So part one is making the background. So let's get into motion first, and my properties are broadcast HD 1080, 30 frames per second, 10 seconds in duration, new motion project, and click open. Once we're open in motion, I am going to go to my preview pane and select fit. So drop it down from 100% to fit, and this fits the preview window to the application. I'm then going to select library on the left hand side and generators. Now there's a lot of really cool backgrounds that you can make really easily in Motion 5, and I'm just going to show you one with a lens flare that you can do here. First of all, this group here, I'm going to select this group in my layers pane, select this group and double click it and call it background and press enter, and I've got a new group called background. In my generators, I'm going to select this lens flare and click apply. Go to my inspector, so with my lens flare selected, my inspector, I'm then going to go to properties, and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger with this scale here. Now I've put mine up to 185% for the time being. When I talk about percentages and numbers within the inspectors, it really doesn't matter. It's totally down to you for most of them, and personal preference what you want them to be on. So next I'm going to go to my position, and likewise you could have your lens flare wherever you want, but I'm going to move mine. I'm going to left click on the X axis and move mine down so it moves across to the left hand side of the screen, and then my Y, left click on my numbers and move it up on the right hand side of the left hand side of my screen, so it's on the top left hand corner of my screen. I'm then going to scale it up a little bit just so it brightens the screen a little bit more. I'm then going to go back to my generator, and I'm going to change some of the colours because I want mine a blue colour. The outer colour, it's going to again keep it blue. The ring colour I'm going to keep blue, and the streak colour I'm going to make a light blue. Now if I click play on my timeline now, you'll notice this lens flare just sits there. So we're going to animate the lens flare a little bit by changing some of the properties down here in this everything below streak intensity. So the way to do this, I'm going to move my timeline back to the start, or around the start. Again, numbers, don't worry about them, it's personal preference. I'm going to go streak intensity and click this little button here, and it will add a keyframe. I'm then going to move my timeline up to 9 seconds and move my streak intensity up to the top. I'm going to move my timeline back down to the start, move my select streak frequency. You don't have to select it, you can just left click the add a keyframe, move my timeline up, and on the streak frequency move that up as well, but I'm not going to do it too much. Stop a little bit there. I'm going to move back down my timeline, go to my streak noise level and click plus or add a keyframe, then move up and just move this up again halfway and go back down to the start of my timeline. The ring radius, I'm going to click plus, add a keyframe, then move up my timeline and drag this up, and likewise with the width, down my timeline, click add a keyframe, move up my timeline, move the slider up, and it will automatically add a keyframe for me again. So now you'll notice from not being or having any movement at all, we've got quite a nicely animated lens flare going on our screen, and all we've done is just change some of the properties. Now what I want to do, I want to copy it, or sorry, duplicate it. So right click on my lens flare and select duplicate. So now I've got the top, the lens flare copy. I'm going to go to my properties, and on the position, on the X axis, I'm going to left click and move up the way. And on my Y axis, I'm going to left click and move down the way. So now I've got this lens flare sort of copied in the corner, but I don't want it exactly the same really. So I'm going to just turn the scale down a little bit, and so it's alike, it's still got the animation, but it's not exactly the same. And you'll notice there is quite a lot of stuff going on now with our animated background, and it looks quite cool. So that's the simple way. So now I'm going to minimize that and lock that, because I'm not going to change my background at all. So that's part 1 complete, and that's our background done. Let's move on to part 2, where we'll add some text, and we will also add a mask. Okay, so welcome to part 2. In part 2 we're going to add some text, and we're also going to add a mask to that text. So select a project, select this little plus button here, and it will add a new group to our project above our background layer. Double click the new group and rename it to text. If you want to, call it whatever you want, but it is text. I'm then going to get my text tool down here in this window here. Select left click text tool and left click drag and drop, or drag and extend out an area for me to type. I'm then going to type directly into this window, and again type whatever you want, but I'm just going to type naturally 13th design. I've still got my inspector selected and my text. With my text selected, I've still got my inspector, my text and my format part selected. So I'm just going to drag this size slider up here to fit the screen, or to drag a size that I'm happy with and just resize the text to a size that I'm happy with. Once I'm happy, I've just shorten my window, and then I'm going to select text in the group, select the text again, and this will allow me to move it. So now I'm going to just use my grid lines to make sure that I've got the center of the screen, like so, by just left clicking and moving and then releasing the left click. So that's our first text created. Very, very simple. Now what I want to do, I want to right click on that text and select duplicate. So I've got a 13th design text on top of another 13th design. With the top one selected, I'm going to select style in my inspector. Now on the face, I'm going to drop the color down and make it a blue that I want. This is the blue that I want. And just for me, I'm going to add an outline, and I'm going to make it a white outline. A nice little trick that you can do to make it, to give it a nice effect, is to just drag this blur up a little bit, and it just gives your text a really nice, especially on a if you're using lighter text on a dark layer. It's really nice. So yeah, I've just dragged this blur up a little bit to give it this effect. Now what we want to do, we want to go to project again. We want to click add a group, double click this group, and we're going to call this mask. Now, when I made a similar video by using a masked text over another text to give the shine, the light sort of glow over the text, a few people got confused. Now they got confused because simply they were adding a filter to a text with mask, and it was the position of the layers that were causing them problems. So just try and watch this carefully and try and look at the position in my layers pane over here of where I've got things. So I've got my blue text. I'm going to drag it into my mask layer. Drag and drop it into my mask layer. So now I've just got my white text in my text group and my blue text, which is going to be the mask, in my mask group. with mask group selected, I'm going to go down here and select this rectangle mask tool, left click, scroll down to Bezier mask with left click selected and release the left click, and then you get this fountain pen type of pointer. And all I'm going to do is by left clicking, I'm going to draw a rectangle around my text, making sure it covers my text completely. So now we've got a mask. Now what I'm going to do with this mask, I'm going to move it off the screen and keyframe it. So I'm going to drag down this view button. I'm going to make it 25% just so I've got a big outline of canvas so I can move the mask across. So with this mask, I'm going to move it across to my left hand side, completely off the screen. So it's completely off the screen. Now what I want to do is move my timeline up to 2 seconds or around 2 seconds and click this little record button which adds a keyframe. You can do it various ways in the inspector, but this is the easiest way that I'm going to show you how to do it. I'm then going to move my 2 seconds up to 5 seconds and drag my mask onto my my text. Now you notice it's given me a keyframe at the very start of the timeline, not up here 2 seconds where I started it, at the very start of my timeline, and that's because I used this record here. So now with this keyframe I'm just going to move it up to around 2 seconds, so drag and drop it to around 2 seconds. So now if I play through, I can deselect record now. If I play through, once it gets there it'll go over. If I select project so you can't see the mask, go back to my there, it'll come across, so the blue is filling in. It seems as though the blue text is filling in the white text. Simple as that. So that's part 2 done. We're now going to move on to part 3, and on part 3 we're going to add a line and we'll mess about with a spark. So we're going to add a motion path and then we'll add the replicator. So welcome to part 3. Now on part 3 what we're going to want to do is add a line to give us a motion path for our sparks to follow. So that's what we'll do first, just because I wouldn't normally do it this way, but it's a lot easier and it makes messing with the properties or the inspector part of the sparks that we'll use a lot easier also. So with project selected, I'm just going to click the plus button and add a new group. Double click the group and rename it. You can either rename it line or motion path. Motion path is the correct term that we're going to use. And then what I'm going to do with the motion path group selected, I'm going to left click on my little rectangle button here, or rectangle shape button, and scroll down to line and select line. Now I'm going to draw a line underneath the 13th or underneath my text, but make it a tiny bit longer than the actual text itself. So let me just zoom in, click fit. So you see my line is from the bottom of the T here up to just past the N, a little bit past the N. Now what we can do is just turn this line off, because we're not too fussed about the line to tell you the truth anyway. So we've got our line, we've got our motion path. Now what we're going to want to do is add our sparks. So we'll go to project, click the little plus button so our new group is at the top. Double click the group and call it sparks. With sparks selected, go to our library, go to our particle emitters, and I'm just going to use this blurry sparks here. So select the blurry spark and click apply. Now what you will notice it does, firstly it defaults to where I've got my my playhead on my timeline, and then secondly it defaults to the center here and it's quite small. So I'm going to go to my sparks. See, it's made another group with this blur. Don't worry about that. Go to your sparks, go to the blurry sparks, go to inspector, go to properties, And let's just drag the size up a little bit and then move our timeline so it's the actual sparks have started. Now, what we can do right away, with the blurry spark selected, we can go to add a behavior here on the left hand side, left click, keep it selected, scroll down to basic motion, scroll across and then over to motion path or down to motion path, and now we've got a behavior added to our sparks. And all this is, we're going to change this to be for it to follow this line here. So we're going to go to our behaviors, our motion sparks, motion path behaviors selected, open spline, geometry. I was going to say open spleen. It's like a carrying out a operation. Open spleen. Go down to geometry. Drag and drop this line into this shape source. So now, quite simply, our sparks will follow a line, which is what we're after. But we want it to follow the line as the text changes colour, like so. So there's a few properties we're going to have to change, but the simple way to do this is select our blurry sparks here. Now in this instance here, this is the timeline up here that we're going to use. Just going to scroll down, find where my keyframe is, and I'm going to drag the start of my blurry sparks to the start of my keyframe here. Now I'm just going to move it along a little bit and shorten it, then drag it back up to the start so it starts when my text comes in. So I'm going to go to my final keyframe and drag my sparks down to my final keyframe. We'll move up. Now you'll notice it's not quite on the keyframe, and that's because our line is a little bit longer than our text itself. So what we want to do is just shorten the sparks again so it finishes exactly when the text does, and we're happy with that. Now we're just going to change a few properties on the sparks. So with my blurry spark selected, I'm going to go over to my emitter, and what I want to change is the colours here. So I'm going to go to my colour first, colour over life, drop this down, select my first colour swatch here, this RGB3, click the colour picker and change it to a blue. Go to my next one, colour picker, change it to a darker blue. Go to my next one, colour picker. Do I want this blue? Do I want it white? What do I want it to? Or do I want it yellow? Let's have a nice yellow there. So I can move these, look, and change the where the colours change and all that stuff. You know, it's quite straightforward. But what I want to do is change some of the properties. So birth rate I'm going to drag up. Birth randomness I'm going to drag up. Initial number I'm going to drag this up. Life, drag this up a little bit too. Life randomness, yeah, change that a little bit. Speed, the speed will split them, look, will split your sparks. I don't want them to split too much. And this is roughly all I'm going to do on that blurry sparks. I'm then going to go to my blur, so it's a different part of the particle emitter, and change some of the birth rate, birth randomness, just change a few of the settings here. Make the life a little bit more, life randomness, a little bit random, speed, don't need too much. So now when I play through my timeline, notice it comes in a lot before the text has started. So I'm just going to need to make my sparks by dragging them. So this is not quite nice now. The text should catch up and finish quite nicely with it. And it really is just trial and error with the speed. I suppose if you zoomed in on your timeline a little bit and showed your keyframes, you could be a little bit more precise. But it really is about getting the timing right with your text and your particle emitter. So it's quite effective. Select project so you can't see. And if you play through now, go to the start of my timeline and play through now, you'll see our background moving nicely, and then we have these sparks come in, changes the color of the text, and the project is finished. Like I said, the underwater sort of and the sounds, I did all that in FCPX, and I will do a video on FCPX with the intros, underwater intros, to complement my new series. So I hope you found this useful, and I hope you can find a way in which to apply it. Think about the backgrounds. You know, you don't just have to use this text. You can use backgrounds in many ways, and they're really easy to create in Motion 5 as well. So thanks a lot for watching. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below, and I'll catch you very soon.